He owned nothing but a torn blanket. Yet one night in the blizzard he chose kindness, and the west shifted forever. Snow sawed at the ridgeline, carving the Rockies into jagged teeth while Eli staggered upward, empty-handed. 12 winters old, no boots, no home, only the instinct to keep moving. His breath frosted, snagged, vanished. Hunger pinched every rib but could not slow his thin legs. Near timberline, a branch cracked. He whirled. A girl in buckskin lurched from the spruces, braid whipped by sleet, blood trickling down her forearm. Her eyes held terror and defiance together, like flint sparking. She steadied herself with a broken snowshoe, ready to swing. For a heartbeat, they faced each other. Two stray sparks in a storm that wanted both gone. Eli raised his palms, empty, harmless, and tore his single blanket, wrapping half around her shaking shoulders. She flinched, then allowed the warmth. Through chattering teeth, she breathed one English syllable. Far. Eli nodded. Far was everywhere for people like them. They climbed side by side, speaking only in gestures. When she faltered, he braced her elbow. When he slipped, she caught his sleeve. Gray dusk erased the trail. He spotted a cleft beneath a leaning boulder and ushered her inside. The cave smelled of wet stone and old ashes. Eli scraped frozen twigs, coaxed a flame that fought the wind howling at the entrance. A single fire can outtalk fear. While sparks danced, the girl traced shapes in soot. 3 triangles, a circle. Then tapped her chest. He guessed a name. Ayanna. She touched his hand, pointed to the flicker, then to her heart. Thanks. Eli offered the last crust in his pocket. She split it equal, pressing half into his palm. Kindness doubled is never diminished. Night tightened like a vice. They huddled under the torn blanket, shoulder to shoulder. Snow packed the cave mouth, muting the world. Eli felt her ribs quiver with cold and exhaustion. He rubbed her hands until blood returned. Outside, coyotes wailed. Inside, 2 children, tribeless, barefoot, half frozen, kept each other alive by choosing not to be strangers. At dawn, the blizzard eased. Icicles hung like glass daggers. Eli ventured out, gathered pine needles for tea, returned to find Ayanna standing, face to rising sun, whispering a chant he could not understand, but felt. Bruises ringed her ankles, as if shackled. Something had chased her over the range. Something might still. They set off again, footprints filling with powder behind them. The ridge grew steeper, wind crueler. Eli hacked footholds with a rusted knife, pushing Ayanna upward first. Clouds parted briefly, revealing endless white peaks. Far below, a valley smoked with distant cabins, their chance. By noon, his feet bled. Ayanna tore a strip from her buckskin hem, wrapped his soles, then motioned onward. Every act of care bound them tighter. In the afternoon, a hawk circled overhead. Ayanna lifted her hand in salute, murmuring words the bird seemed to carry away. Sunlight faded, the summit still loomed. They found a ledge sheltered by dwarf pines. Frost already silvered their hair. Eli scrabbled for tinder but found only damp bark. He clenched his jaw, striking flint until sparks caught. The fire was small, but the victory enormous. Ayanna smiled. First time, a shy crescent that made the long climb worthwhile. Before sleep, she drew another symbol in ash. 2 lines crossing, then running parallel. She tapped his chest, then hers. Together. He nodded, feeling an ache deeper than hunger, yearning to belong somewhere, even if only beside this runaway with midnight eyes. They slept curled like twin question marks, asking the same silent plea. Let us see tomorrow. Wind screamed, but did not break them. Beneath the blanket, Warmth pooled, stubborn, real. When the fire burned low, Eli's mind wandered to the valley he'd fled. The clappered orphanage where chores were traded for crusts, the overseer's belt that struck faster than words, the moonlit window he slipped through and never returned. Did anyone keep a ledger of lost children? Or did the wilderness simply erase them? Ayana's past remained a sealed saddlebag, but clues glinted. The torn beadwork on her collar, her flinch at distant thunder, the welt across her shoulder. Whoever hunted her would shorten the miles by dawn. Before first light, Eli woke to a silence so pure it rang. Stars prickled like frost-born embers. For a moment, the world paused, holding a breath. He reached out, ensuring Ayana still slept beside him. Only then did he allow hope. Survive the next valley, perhaps find bread, even a roof. Perhaps keep this newfound sister. Hope can be a heavier pack than hunger. But Eli shouldered it anyway, as the east blushed pale rose. They rose, stamped out the coals, and stepped into snow that glittered as if strewn with shards of moon. Behind them, the cave and its charred symbols faded, but the promise they forged in fire traveled with them, invisible yet unbreakable. Dawn cracked pale gold, but the cold clung like iron. Eli shook snow from his hair and eased Ayana to her feet. Their breath rose in twin coils, the only smoke for miles. Hunger pinched deeper. The half-blanket had shrunk to a rag, yet the valley below glimmered. Cabins, a sawmill, maybe bread. Hope, so near it hurt. The descent began brutal. Ice sheathed every ledge. Eli chipped footholds with his dull knife until his knuckles bled. Ayana steadied him, whispering rhythms of an old song. Though he caught no words, the cadence lent balance. Wind tunneled through canyons, carrying scents of pine and distant wood smoke. Each gust felt like a hand pushing them onward, or warning them back. Mid-slope they found cougar prints, wide and fresh. Eli's pulse hammered. He tightened fingers around a branch whittled to a spear. Have you ever felt courage thin as paper yet still held it between shaking hands? Ayana crouched, studying the tracks. She touched 2 fingers to her eyes, then to the trail ahead. Watch. They moved slower, every twig snap echoing like rifle fire. By noon, clouds sealed the sky. Snow began again, soft at first, then furious. Visibility shrank to arm's length. They leaned together, footprints filling faster than they made them. When the storm eased, they stumbled onto a frozen creek veined with black cracks. Eli scanned upstream. A beaver dam bulged with driftwood, shelter. They crawled beneath the overhang, lungs burning. Inside, darkness smelled of wet fur and sap. Eli struck flint. The first spark fizzled, the second caught. Orange light exposed their raw faces and cracked lips, blood-stained socks. Ayana produced a pouch of dried choke cherries, a secret reserve. She poured half into Eli's palm. Sweetness flooded his tongue, almost painful. Share, she said at last, her first English word beyond far and safe. He nodded, cheeks stinging with grateful heat. When the fire settled, she traced another symbol in soot, a crooked line zigzagging between 2 peaks, ending in a spiral. She tapped her heart, then pointed to the spiral. Journey becomes circle. Eli wondered if circles could include him. Night crept back, but the dam's wood popped cheerful sparks. Ayana braided a strand of his hair into hers, tiny but binding. Eli swallowed the lump in his throat. No one had touched him with gentleness since his mother tucked him under quilts smelling of lavender, seasons ago. Hours before dawn, gunfire shattered sleep. A sharp report rolled across the creek, followed by men's voices barking orders. Ayana jolted, eyes huge. Eli doused the embers, clamped a hand over her mouth. Instinct, desperate. Outside, boots crunched, a lantern beam sliced the darkness, probing. Soldiers, blue coats, spurs, impatience. The beam skimmed the dam entrance, paused. Eli's heartbeat went savage. He counted the seconds. 5, 10, until the light swung away. Hoofbeats receded like thunder crossing ridges. Ayanna sagged, tears glazing her lashes, but refusing to fall. Eli squeezed her fingers. Quiet wins, he whispered, a phrase he'd learned from street gamblers dodging constables. She breathed it in like medicine. When sunrise paled the creek, they crawled out. Powdery snow hid all but the lantern tracks. Eli examined the boot impressions. Army issue, heading southeast. Danger had shape now. They skirted timber, keeping low. A ravine opened ahead, spitting steam where hot springs met cold air. Wisps curled around their legs, masking them from hunters but soaking clothes. Still, warmth teased stiff joints, and they lingered long enough to thaw toes. On the far bank, Ayanna halted, listening. Distant hooves, many, rhythmic, not the clatter of iron shoes, but the soft drum of rawhide. She smiled through exhaustion. Eli frowned, confused. She pointed north, drew 30 small dots in snow, then tapped her chest. Her people, warriors. Would 30 riders welcome the boy who sheltered their lost daughter? Uncertainty sliced Eli's hope. He pictured stern faces, painted skin, arrows nocked. Acceptance was never free. They pressed on, aiming for the valley floor before nightfall. Spruce thinned. Wagons must have carved the slope months ago. Deep ruts aided descent. Near dusk, the trees parted, revealing a long meadow powdered silver. Smoke ribbons curled from a single trapping cabin beside a churned ice pond. Weak as they were, approaching light felt like walking into a sermon of comfort. But caution ruled. Eli circled wide, scouting. One-legged tracks led from the door to a woodpile. Crutch marks in snow, the trapper perhaps alone, perhaps armed. Ayanna touched his sleeve, nodding approval of caution. Then her knees buckled. He caught her, heart lurching. Decision collapsed. They needed shelter now. He knocked, voice rasping. "Help us?" No answer. He nudged the latch. The door yawned inward, hinges groaning, interior lamplight pooled weakly. Wick turned low as if abandoned mid-meal. A skillet cooled on the stove, grease still popping. Whoever lived here had stepped out minutes earlier. Eli carried Ayanna to a cot, braided from rope and canvas. She shivered violently. He fed the stove-split logs, flame leaping bright. Shelves held miracle. Glass jar of jerky, tin of coffee, sack of beans. He tore jerky strips, warmed them on the lid, pressed one to her lips. She chewed slow, life returning to her gaze, while water heated. He noticed parchment nailed above the hearth, a crumpled army notice. Reward. Return of Captain Mercer's fortune. Suspected runaway native youth. Female, wearing buckskin. Rough sketch resembled Ayanna. Beneath, someone, perhaps the trapper, had written in charcoal, "Leave children be." Eli's stomach clenched. Soldiers weren't hunting criminals. They were hunting her. Boot crunch outside. Lantern glow flickered under the door. Eli snuffed the stove flame fast as thought. He grabbed the iron poker, lungs shallow. Ayanna hid behind crates. The latch rattled. Door swung to reveal a gaunt man with a wooden leg, beard hoary as frost, rifle dangling casual. But his eyes took in the darkened room with soldier's sharpness. Eli raised the poker, voice failing. The man lifted a brow, spoke gravel soft. "Easy, kid. Ain't here to skin you." Lantern revealed Ayanna's face. His gaze flicked to the notice on the wall, back to her. Silence swelled, tense as bowstring. Rifle lowered. He huffed. Name's Graves. Cabin's big enough for ghosts and orphans. He kicked the door shut against the cold. You eat that stew or waste it? Eli shook his head. Graves limped forward, set rifle aside, stirred the pot, added beans. Then sit. Ayanna edged out. Graves met her stare, neither warm nor cruel. Seen plenty run, he muttered. Bluecoats don't pay me enough to care. He ladled steaming stew into tin cups, shoved them across the table. They ate in near silence, savoring salt. At last, Graves gestured to Bunks. Storm's coming again. Tomorrow we talk. He blew out the lantern, leaving embers pulsing faint red. In darkness, Eli felt something new. Reprieve, fragile yet palpable. The mountain had stopped taking. For one night, it gave. Ayanna's hand slipped into his. He squeezed back. No need for words. The journey's circle turned, gathering momentum. Somewhere beyond the tree line, 30 hoofbeats waited, and soldiers loaded rifles. Between those fates stood one trapper, one boy, one girl, and a thread of kindness spun stronger every mile. Snow stopped just before dawn, leaving the world frozen in a single breath. Inside the trapping cabin, embers pulsed like slow hearts. Eli woke first. Hunger still chewed, yet his body felt steadier than any morning he could remember. He rose, careful not to rattle the stove, and eased the door open a thumb's width. The pre-dawn hush was so pure it almost sang. But along the tree line shapes moved, 30 riders, silhouettes painted in charcoal against the gray sky. Horses steamed, manes iced, feathers fluttered from hair and lance tips. Have you ever seen silence ride on 30 hooves at once? Eli's pulse slammed. He shut the door, back pressed to wood. Graves blinked awake, reaching automatically for the rifle. Ayanna sat bolt upright, eyes impossibly bright. She hurried to the window slit, peered out, then pressed her palm to her chest. Heart beat fast, yet her mouth formed a single word of breathless relief. Family. Graves grunted. Whole war party. Looks like they want answers. He limped to stoke the stove, as if brewing coffee might slow destiny. Outside, the chief dismounted. Scar across his cheek, eagle bone in hair. He lifted an arm. The riders fanned, encircling the yard with solemn ceremony. Eli slipped the shell necklace, Ayanna's keepsake, into his pocket. Fingers trembling, he'd planned to return it. Now he feared it marked him an imposter. Ayanna stepped forward, unlatched the door. Cold flooded in, carrying cedar smoke and raw power. She walked into the ring of warriors barefoot. Buckskin hem frayed, yet held herself like sunrise on granite. Eli followed, though his knees shook. Graves stayed just inside the threshold, rifle lowered but ready. Chief spoke in rolling Lakota. Ayanna answered. Words like drumbeats, gesture toward the peaks beyond. When she pointed to Eli, 30 pairs of eyes swung his way. He wanted to vanish into the snow, yet stood taller. The chief approached, studied the boy's patched shirt, frost-burned cheeks, and the stubborn fire behind them. At last, he spoke in broken English. You give blanket, you give fire, you give life. Then he tapped Eli's chest with 2 knuckles, not hard, but enough to feel bone. We give back. Warriors dismounted. One produced a pony, coal black, mane braided with red cloth. Another laid out buffalo robes, beaded moccasins, bags of pemmican, gifts piled like small mountains. Eli's mind reeled. Could a single night's mercy be worth this avalanche of gratitude? Yet gratitude held weight. Soldiers would be searching these valleys. If Eli accepted, he joined their danger. If he refused, he insulted their honor. He looked to Ayanna. She placed the shell necklace over his head in front of the entire circle. Her voice, steady now, reached every ear. "Brother." The chief raised his palm. The riders thumped lance butts once. Deep, resonant acceptance. A shout split the moment. On the south ridge, 2 blue-coated scouts appeared, rifles up. They must have followed the lantern track from last night. The Lakota drew bows with fluid speed. Graves jacked around into his rifle. Eli felt the world narrow to a pinprick. Would blood erase the fragile bridge they'd built? Before an arrow flew, Eli sprinted forward, waving his arms, yelling, "Don't shoot, she's just a girl." Wind stole half the words, but the act froze both sides. Scouts hesitated, startled by a ragged white boy in front of 30 armed warriors. In that hesitation, the chief lifted his hand, fingers spread. Parley. One scout cupped his mouth, shouted terms lost to distance. Chief replied in clear English, "Children safe, go." For a heartbeat, the ridge held 2 futures, crimson snow or retreat. The scouts glanced at each other, weighed 30-2 odds, and wheeled horses, vanishing over the lip. Breath released from a dozen chests. The chief faced Eli. "You brave. Blood not needed." He clasped the boy's shoulder, approval that felt like sunlight after endless storm. If that moment made your heart pound, tap like now. Let the algorithm know courage still matters on this trail. Mid-story CTA relief rolled through the circle, but choices remained. Chief spoke again, slower so the boy could grasp. "Tribe rides north. Winter camp. You come. Learn, eat, belong." He opened his other palm toward the cabin. "Or stay with one-leg man. Paths differ, honor same." Graves stepped outside at last. Coffee steaming in tin mug, he regarded Eli with something near pride. "Kid, roof's yours if you want it. Mill needs hands. Pay's honest. Food's hot." His voice roughened. "But choose with your own gut, not out of debt." Ayanna moved to Eli's side, pressed her forehead to his. No tear fell, yet everything inside the boy shifted, aligning like sparks into flame. He pictured 2 futures, riding the northern plains beside a sister of spirit, or building a life of boards and nails with the gruff man who'd opened a door without payment. Both felt like belonging. Both tasted of fear and promise. Have you ever held 2 homes in one heartbeat? Eli stepped back, breathing cold air sharp as citrus. He drew the shell necklace off and placed it over Ayanna's braid. "Keep," he whispered. Her eyes widened, then softened into understanding. He turned to the chief, pressed his open hands, a gesture of gratitude learned moments ago. "I stay," he said, voice cracking yet firm, "but friend always." The chief nodded once, the motion weighty as treaty. Warriors remounted. Ayanna lingered, sliding a small carved bone flute into Eli's palm, gift and memory. "Blow when need," she said, then sprang onto her pony. 30 riders wheeled north, hooves drumming farewell that trembled in the boy's ribs long after the last feather vanished into pine shadow. Silence settled. Graves exhaled. "Well," he muttered. "Reckon breakfast turned lively." He offered Eli the mug. Coffee burned the boy's tongue, crisp and bitter. It tasted exactly like staying alive. They returned to the cabin. Work waited. Wood to cut, traps to check, fences to mend before real spring melt. Eli hung the flute by his bunk, its hollow whisper promising that circles can widen farther than any horizon. Yet as dusk painted the valley, distant drumbeats floated from the northern ridge, a rhythm both farewell and invitation. Eli listened, heart straddling 2 worlds, and felt not torn but expanded, as if kindness had stretched his spirit wide enough to hold them both. The fire crackled. Graves snored softly. Mountains watched, unblinking. Somewhere beyond the ridges, soldiers planned their next search. But inside the cabin, peace grew sturdy as timber. And in the boy's pocket lay a single bead from the shell necklace, warm against his skin, pulsing like a second heartbeat, reminding him that deeds planted in snow can bloom across nations. March lights spilled thin gold over the valley, revealing a land half freed from ice, yet still shackled by chill. Eli rose before Graves each dawn, chopping timber until blisters split, then split again and turned to callus. Work filled his stomach better than stew, though Graves insisted on both. The cabin gained a new roof patch, tighter chinking, a second bunk. Evidence that the boy meant to stay. But staying never means a stillness. One morning, low clouds bruised purple, and crows gathered on fence rails, restless omens. Graves spat coffee grounds into snow. Storms coming, but not just weather. He felt it the way soldiers feel cannon long before the boom. By noon, hoofbeats thundered up the mill road. Blue coats this time, 5 scouts, rifles cradled easy as shovels. Their lieutenant bore a crisp beard and impatient eyes. He dismounted, boots crunching to the porch. Graves met him, rifle leaning against the jamb but hands visible. "Name?" the officer barked. "Graves," the old man answered. "Harboring runaways." "Native girl, white boy, seen him?" Graves shrugged. "Seen plenty tracks. Snow erases most." The officer's gaze slid to Eli, who'd stepped from the barn wiping sawdust. Ragged kid, but the shell bead on a leather string glinted at his neck. The officer's brows tightened. "Come here, son." Eli went jaw set. The lieutenant fingered the bead. "Where'd you get Lakota trinket?" Eli held the stare. "Gift." The man snorted. "War gifts usually paid in blood. Best tell me where the girl is before her savage friends raid another ranch." Eli's pulse hammered. He thought of Ayanna's soft chant, the bone flute hanging above his bunk. He said nothing. Graves shifted, wood leg creaking. "Lieutenant, Winters killed more men here than any tribe. Let the children be." Blue eyes narrowed. "I'll let nothing. Orders from Fort Kendrick. Retrieve the runaway before she stirs more sympathy." He turned to his men. "Search the outbuildings." They fanned out, kicking doors, overturning feed barrels. One trooper found the flute, whistled a mock tune. Eli's fists clenched, but Graves's hand on his shoulder anchored him. The trooper tossed the flute aside. It hit the floor with a hollow grief. Finding nothing, the lieutenant returned, irritation ripe. He grabbed Eli's arm. "We'll take the boy along. He can point tracks." Graves stepped forward, rifle up now. "He's under my roof." The world held its breath. Rifles lifted on both sides, metal catching weak sun. Have you ever felt time split? One branch blooming peace, the other iron. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a distant echo floated over pines. 3 drumbeats, faint but certain. The lieutenant glanced to the ridgeline, uneasy. Myths of 30 warriors still rode whispers. He pushed Eli away. "Fine, but we'll be back." They mounted, wheeled, thundered south. Snow burst under hooves like gunpowder. Silence returned, brittle. Graves lowered the rifle slowly. "Kid, storm's truly here." He retrieved the flute, pressed it into Eli's palm. "If they return with more men, blow it. Can't promise magic, but sound carries." That night, wind rose, rattling shutters. Eli lay awake, fingers tracing the flute's carved lines, twin paths running side by side. He pictured Ayanna across black forests, maybe hearing the same wind. He whispered into the dark, "Safe." Days passed. tension coiling tighter. Scouts roved the valley, smoke of their campfires bruised sunset. Graves and Eli worked by lamplight, stacking provisions, sealing crates, preparing, though for what, neither said aloud. Then, on a dawn-washed silver, riders appeared again, this time a squad, 12 rifles, snow creaking beneath military precision. No questioning now, they spread to encircle cabin and sawmill. Lieutenant raised a hand, surrender sign twisted into threat. Eli's pulse throbbed in his ears. Graves cocked the Winchester. We hold or we run. Eli glanced north. Pine stood mute. He lifted the flute to his lips, breath trembling. A single note cut the cold, sharp, mournful, soaring beyond trees. Again he blew, 3 calls, the pattern Ayanna had taught. Need, help, now. Troopers advanced. Woodleg or not, Graves fired first. Warning shot gouging snow at their boots. Bullets answered, slamming into porch posts. Splinters whined past Eli's cheek. He ducked, hard a drum. Inside cabin, kerosene lamp shattered, flame licking boards, smoke curled. Graves cursed, stomped, but bullets peppered walls, feeding sparks. Eli dragged water buckets, dousing tongues of fire. Outside, the lieutenant shouted terms drowned by gunfire. Seconds felt like winters. Then, from the ridge, a sound gathered. Hoofbeats, many rolling thunder. Troopers hesitated, heads snapping toward tree line. 30 figures burst from pines, war paint vivid against snow, lances glinting like lightning. At their front rode Ayanna, braid streaming, eyes fierce. If loyalty surging over the hill stirred your blood, hammer that like button so the story rides further. Engagement pulse, troopers faltered, lines breaking. Lieutenant wheeled, yelling retreat. Arrows thudded into snow near their mounts. Warning shots, impeccable. Terror beat discipline. Soldiers fled south, swallowed by white dust. The warriors reined in before the cabin. Chief dismounted, scanning damage. Eli stepped through the smoke-curtained doorway, soot-streaked, clutching the flute. Ayanna slid from her pony, crossing the yard without sound. She pressed her forehead to his, breath mingling with wood smoke and relief. Chief surveyed Graves, nodded respect. Old soldier brave. Then he motioned to northward woods, speaking English for all. Winter camp safe come. Graves looked at the ruined porch, shattered windows, bullet-scarred mill wheel. He sighed. Leg won't make that trip, and someone's got to rebuild. He shoved the rifle into Eli's hands, but he ought to see spring someplace scouts won't burn. Eli froze, torn again between roots and roads. Graves gripped the boy's shoulder. Go. Learn what peace looks like on their side. Bring some back. Eli's throat tightened, but he nodded. He turned to Ayanna. Her answering smile was sunrise. Warriors made space as he climbed behind her on the pony. The chief signaled, and the column broke north, hooves silent over fresh powder. The cabins shrank behind them, smoke still tattering from broken rafters. Eli looked back until trees swallowed the view. Then he faced the new horizon, unwritten, immense, ringed by drumbeats. He felt no fear, only widening. Somewhere beyond that horizon, soldiers licked wounds, planning return. Somewhere south, Graves hammered new boards, waiting for stories. And between those worlds rode 2 children, stitched together by a ragged blanket and one act of unprofitable kindness. Children who were, at last, no longer homeless. Snow turned to needles of rain as spring pushed north. But winter camp still crouched beneath tall pines, a ring of rawhide lodges breathing wood smoke. Eli woke each dawn to smell of sage and simmering corn, to children's laughter, to Ayanna tugging him toward chores, mending snares, carving stakes, gathering willow shoots for baskets. Weeks stretched into something like belonging. The chief, Ohanzi Wikesa, Stone Man, watched the boy sharpen arrow shafts, correcting angle with a silent tap. When Eli split one shaft, frustration flared. The chief broke a second on purpose, placed fragments together to form a new, stronger joint, then murmured only two English words: break, join. Lesson lodged deeper than splinters. Among warriors, Eli learned horse commands no saddle-trained rancher knew. Among elders, he learned stories of stars guiding buffalo and grief ripening into courage. Nights by the council fire, he told his own thin tale: street alleys, orphanage belt, blizzard cave. No one mocked the gaps. They listened until silence filled them, then nodded as if mapping a place for him inside their constellations. Have you ever felt past and future clasp hands across your ribs? Eli breathed easier. Yet a thread tugged southward. Memory of graves hammering shingles alone, memory of sawmill gears idle. He strung that pull like bowstring, waiting. Pull tightened 6 weeks later. A dust cloud crawled along Southern Valley, resolving into blue coats. 30 this time, led by the same lieutenant, now reinforced with a Gatling cart. Scouts fanned ridge lines, axes marking trees for sight lines. War drums hushed, camp hearts thudded louder. At dusk, council convened. Some favored ambush, some parley. Stone Man turned to Eli. The boy's half-world eyes might read soldiers better. Eli pictured graves, pictured bullet-scarred porch, pictured there will be no mercy but the one we make. He spoke slow. Talk first, show we carry peace, yet won't bow. Dawn. Warriors rode to an open meadow, lances sheathed in leather sleeves, a signal older than forts. Eli rode beside Stone Man. Ayanna followed, bow across lap. Soldiers faced them in firing line, horsetail snapping. Lieutenant stepped forward, fingertips brushing pistol. Rain clouds bruised sky, as if thunder held its tongue. Stone Man dismounted, lifted empty palms. Eli translated, "Return north, harm none. Trade for hides come summer." Lieutenant's voice cracked back, thick with pride. "Surrender the girl, surrender the boy. The frontier's not big enough for strays wearing stolen beads." Twist coiled. Eli swung from pony, walked halfway between lines, palms up like the chief. He unlooped the bead necklace, held it high. Not stolen, gift for a gift. He pointed at the Gatling. "Your gun steals futures. Send it away. We stay open." Murmur rippled through troopers. Lieutenant barked laugh. "Boy, lead, not words. Chooses law." He signaled gunner to crank a single warning burst. Cloud of smoke, whir of barrels, bullets shredding mud yards short of warriors. Horses reared, frightened birds exploded from grass. Yet no arrow loosed. Stone Man stood unmoved. Thunder chose its branch. 2 worlds at hinge. Eli inhaled till lungs ached, lifted bone flute. 3 notes, high, low, high, skimmed rain-thick air. Behind troopers, echo answered. Hooves on timber bridge. From the south came Graves atop a mule, wooden leg lashed tight, and behind him miners, trappers, even a preacher's wagon. Dozens, rifles slung but pointed earthward. Valley folk who'd tasted Lakota trade, who'd lost kin to cold more than to arrows. Graves called out, voice weathered raw. "Put that crank gun away. These children saved more lives than your payroll ever will." Lieutenant spun, startled to find his flank unguarded. Town rifles cocked loud, the standoff inverted. Blue coats were now the pinched thing in the middle. If a one-legged trapper rolling up with half the valley made you grin, smash that like so the story stomps further down the trail. Pulse CTA rain, loosened into steady fall, smothering Gatling's powder. Lieutenant's ambition sagged. He barked a hollow order. Troopers backed mounts, wheeled, began slow withdrawal. Faces tight, cause unraveling in wet wind. Thunder finally spoke, distant and harmless. When last bluecoat vanished beyond aspen stands, Meadow exhaled. Graves dismounted, limped to Eli, pulled the boy into a rough embrace that smelled of pine pitch. "Knew you'd holler if things bent bad," he muttered. Eli pressed forehead to the man's chest, finding heartbeat firm as cedar. Ayanna clasped Eli's arm. 3 stood like spokes of one wheel. Stoneman approached Graves, offered pipe. Trapper accepted, both puffing in wordless treaty. Rain fell gentler, washing powder smell from grass. Weeks flowed like thawed creeks. Soldiers never returned. Valley folk in Lakota exchanged seed beans for tanned hides, iron nails for herbal salves. Graves's mill wheel spun again, powered by Ayanna's clever redirect of runoff. She laughed when blades first turned, sun catching her braids like copper sparks. Eli rode south on trade trips, north for moon celebrations, heart stretching without tearing. Summer solstice burned sky bronze. Under wide dusk, Stoneman gifted Eli a new name. Wichakpithawa, star that wanders yet returns. The camp cheered. Eli felt the name lock into bones as sure as his own pulse. Autumn's first chill, they drove cattle to Graves's meadow, planting wheat where bullets once bit dirt. Harvest moon rose fat. Around bonfire, trappers, preachers, Lakota grandmothers shared stew. Eli carved a small cedar sign and hung it at meadow edge. To Heart Field, Ayanna traced letters, grinning. Night deepened. Graves passed Eli the bone flute. "Play us home, boy." Wind caught first note, carrying it beyond ridge where coyotes answered like distant clapping. Eli's mind skimmed backward. Ragged blanket, cave fire, 30 warriors at dawn. Gatling braced in mud. Every step a circle joining the next until trail drew no hard lines between camps, only beads on one long strand. He lowered the flute, voice steady. Light, share, live. 3 words, promise and prayer. Camp settled, embers winking. Above, stars wheeled slow. One fell, a white streak crossing black. Ayanna gasped, soft. Clutched Eli's hand. Stoneman nodded toward the bright scar. Circles wider than sky. He whispered through interpreter. Eli understood without need of translation. If that journey branded your heart, hammer-like, thump, subscribe, and let the comments ring with the moment that struck you most. Tell us where kindness rode hardest, and return tomorrow for another tale beneath the wild, wise stars.